My sister tried to take my daughter's college fund for her dream vacation. I never imagined that the biggest threat to my daughter's future would come from my own sister. When I say we grew up close, I mean we shared clothes, secrets, and dreams. I always believed that no matter what happened, family would stand by each other. That belief shattered the afternoon my sister sat across from me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and asked for something I could never give. For years, I had quietly built my daughter's college fund. Every extra shift I worked, every bonus from my job, every birthday where I skipped buying myself something nice, it all went into that account. It wasn't a fortune, but it represented years of sacrifice and the promise that my little girl would have opportunities I never had. My daughter was only 17, already talking excitedly about universities, scholarships, and the career she dreamed of. Watching her work hard made every penny I'd saved feel worthwhile. Then my sister announced she wanted to take the trip of a lifetime. She had been obsessed with luxury travel videos online and couldn't stop talking about white sand beaches, overwater villas, and expensive restaurants. At first, I thought she was simply sharing her plans. Instead, she looked straight at me and said, "You have money sitting there doing nothing. Why not let me borrow it?" I laughed because I honestly thought she was joking. She wasn't. She leaned closer and explained that my daughter's college wouldn't start for another year, so the money could be used now and repaid later. According to her, memories were priceless and I was being too cautious. I calmly replied, "That's not spare money, it's my daughter's future." Room fell silent. For a second, I expected her to nod and move on. Instead, her expression hardened. "So you're choosing money over your own sister?" That sentence stunned me. She wasn't asking me to lend her grocery money after an emergency or help pay medical bills. She wanted to finance a luxury vacation. I reminded her that she'd spent months shopping online, buying designer handbags and upgrading her phone. She brushed it off, insisting everyone deserved happiness. I answered, "And my daughter deserves an education." Word somehow spread through the family faster than I expected. Within days, relatives began calling me. One aunt said I should compromise because family helps family. A cousin suggested lending only half the fund, as though splitting my daughter's future in two somehow made sense. The pressure kept building until I started questioning myself. Was I being too protective? Too stubborn? Then I looked at the framed photo on my desk of my daughter studying late at night, surrounded by textbooks and sticky notes. I remembered every promise I'd made to her when she was little, that if she worked hard, I'd do everything I could to support her dreams. That promise mattered more than anyone's vacation. My sister wasn't finished, though. A week later, she invited me out for coffee, saying she wanted to apologize. Hoping we could repair things, I agreed. She arrived cheerful and friendly, chatting about random topics before casually sliding a printed travel itinerary across the table. "Look," she said. "I've already planned everything. All I need is the payment." I pushed the paper back. She sighed dramatically and said, "You're acting like your daughter is going to Harvard tomorrow. She won't even miss the money." I felt my patience disappear. "Actually," I replied, "she would, because that account isn't just money. It's years of hard work, discipline, and love." People at nearby tables glanced over as my sister's voice grew louder. She accused me of valuing a bank account more than blood, claiming I'd become selfish after becoming a mother. I stood up, left enough cash to cover my coffee, and walked away without another word. That evening, I received a message from my daughter asking if everything was okay. She'd heard whispers from relatives but didn't know the details. I told her not to worry and simply said, "No matter what happens, your education comes first." She replied with a single sentence that nearly brought tears to my eyes. "Mom, I never asked for a big college fund. I just wanted you to know I appreciate everything you've done." Reading that made every sacrifice feel worth it. But I still had no idea that my sister's next move would cross a line so unbelievable that even some relatives who had defended her would finally start changing their minds. The next morning, I woke up to more messages than I'd received in months. My phone buzzed nonstop with missed calls from cousins, aunts, and even relatives I rarely spoke to. At first, I assumed my sister had continued complaining about me behind my back. I wasn't prepared for what I actually found. She had posted online about the situation. Without nomming me directly, she wrote about having a heartless family member who refused to help her achieve a lifelong dream despite having more than enough money to spare. The comments poured in from people who only knew one side of the story, calling the unnamed relative selfish and greedy. I took a screenshot, closed the app, and decided not to engage. Arguing on the internet wasn't going to protect my daughter's future. A few hours later, my sister called me. "I can't believe you're letting people think I'm the bad guy," she said. I almost laughed. "You made the post," I replied. "You left out the part where the money belongs to my daughter's education." She went quiet for a second before saying, "That's not how I wanted people to see it." Exactly. She knew that if everyone heard the full story, they wouldn't be so quick to take her side. The following weekend, our parents invited the family over for dinner. I debated skipping it, but decided hiding would only make things worse. As soon as I walked in, I could feel the tension. Conversations stopped. People glanced at me, then at my sister. Dinner carried on awkwardly until one uncle finally cleared his throat and asked, "Can't this be worked out somehow?" Before I could answer, my sister jumped in. "I only asked for a loan. She acts like I'm stealing from a child." I calmly looked around the table and said, "Would any of you empty your child's college savings to pay for someone else's luxury vacation?" Silence. No one answered. Then my father quietly asked my sister, "Do you have a repayment plan?" She hesitated. "Well, not exactly." "When would you pay it back?" Sure, I'd figure something out. Room grew noticeably uncomfortable. For the first time, some of the relatives who had been criticizing me realized there had never been a concrete plan, just hope and assumptions. My mother changed the subject before things escalated, but the mood had already shifted. After dinner, one cousin pulled me aside. "I didn't know it was your daughter's college fund," she admitted. "I thought it was just savings." I nodded. "That's why I never considered lending it. Once it's gone, there's no guarantee it comes back." She apologized for judging me so quickly. Unfortunately, my sister wasn't ready to let it go. A few days later, she showed up at my house unannounced, carrying shopping bags and speaking as though nothing had happened. After a few minutes of small talk, she looked around and asked, "Where do you keep the paperwork for the college account?" My heart skipped. I asked why she needed to know. She smiled and said, "I was just curious. Maybe I could help you manage it." That was enough for me. I firmly told her that my finances were private and that I wasn't discussing the account with anyone anymore. Her expression changed instantly. "So you don't trust your own sister?" I answered honestly. "When it comes to protecting my daughter's future, trust isn't the issue. Boundaries are." She left looking furious, slamming the front gate behind her. That evening, I sat down with my daughter and explained everything from the beginning. I didn't want her hearing rumors or distorted versions from extended family. She listened quietly, then reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Mom," she said softly, "I'd rather postpone college than let this tear the family apart." I smiled and shook my head. "No. The whole reason I saved this money was so you would never have to make sacrifices because of someone else's choices." She hugged me, and in that moment I knew I'd made the right decision. Still, I had a feeling this wasn't over. My sister had spent weeks insisting the money was practically hers to borrow, and people who feel entitled rarely give up easily. I just didn't expect her next idea to involve convincing another family member to pressure me with an offer that sounded reasonable on the surface, but carried consequences I couldn't ignore. 2 days later, my aunt called and asked if I could meet her for lunch. She sounded unusually serious, so I agreed. When I arrived, I immediately noticed my sister sitting at the table beside her. No one had mentioned she would be there. I considered walking away, but I decided to stay. If there was something they wanted to say, I'd rather hear it face to face than through another round of family gossip. My aunt smiled nervously and slid a folder across the table. "Come up with a solution," she said. Inside was a handwritten agreement. According to the plan, I would lend my sister a large portion of my daughter's college fund, and several relatives would vouch that she'd repay it over the next few years. I read every page carefully before closing the folder. "There are no guarantees here," I said. "No collateral, no schedule I can rely on, just promises." My sister rolled her eyes. "You always think the worst of people." I stayed calm. "No, I prepare for the worst because that's my responsibility as a parent." She crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair. "It's just money." I looked her straight in the eye. "No. To me, it's years of overtime shifts, skipped vacations, second-hand furniture, and saying no to things I wanted so my daughter could say yes to opportunities later." For a moment, no one spoke. Then my aunt quietly admitted she hadn't realized how much I had sacrificed to build that fund. The meeting ended without an agreement. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed with a message from my daughter. "How did it go?" I replied with one sentence. Your future is still safe. That evening, my sister sent me a long text accusing me of embarrassing her in front of the family. She claimed I was making her look irresponsible. I typed several responses before deleting them all. Instead, I simply wrote, "The answer is still no." A week passed, and things seemed to settle down. Then one afternoon, I received an unexpected call from the bank. The representative politely informed me that someone had recently contacted them asking general questions about the college account and whether another family member could access it. Thankfully, no information had been shared, but the call was enough to make my stomach drop. I immediately updated my security settings and added extra verification to the account. When I confronted my sister, she insisted it had all been a misunderstanding. I was only asking questions, she said. But it wasn't your account to ask about, I replied. She accused me of overreacting, but by then I realized the issue wasn't the vacation anymore. It was entitlement. She genuinely believed that because we were family, she had a claim to money I'd spent years saving. After that conversation, I decided to stop discussing my finances altogether. Family gatherings became easier once I refused to engage. If someone brought up the college fund, I changed the subject. If they pushed, I excused myself. Slowly, the phone calls and opinions faded. Then something unexpected happened. My daughter earned a substantial academic scholarship. When she opened the email and read the congratulations aloud, we both burst into happy tears. The scholarship didn't cover every expense, but it eased a huge part of the financial burden we'd been preparing for. Relatives who had once criticized me began calling to congratulate her. Some even admitted that protecting the fund had been the right decision all along. As for my sister, she eventually postponed her dream vacation. It turned out that luxury resorts and first-class flights were much harder to afford when no one else was paying. Looking back, I don't regret standing my ground for a second. People often say money can be earned again. Maybe that's true. But trust, peace of mind, and a child's chance to pursue her dreams are far more difficult to replace. And if I ever have to choose again between disappointing an adult and protecting my daughter's future, I'll make the same decision every single time. Just when I thought the situation had finally settled down, another surprise landed on my doorstep. It was a plain white envelope with no return address. Inside was a brochure for the exact resort my sister had been talking about for months. Someone had circled the words, "limited time offer," in bright red ink and written a short note underneath. Some opportunities never come back. Stared at it for a moment before folding it in half and tossing it into the recycling bin. I wasn't going to let guilt dictate my decisions. A few days later, my mother invited me over for tea. She admitted that the constant arguments were exhausting the whole family and asked if there was any chance I would reconsider. I gently shook my head. Love my sister, I said, but loving someone doesn't mean funding every choice they make. My mother sighed and nodded. Deep down, I think she already knew my answer. On my way home, I picked up my daughter from her study group. She climbed into the car, excitedly talking about a presentation she had aced and a professor who encouraged her to apply for an advanced program. Listening to her enthusiasm reminded me why I'd started saving in the first place. Every late night, every extra shift, every careful budget had been for moments like this. Then my phone rang. It was my cousin. "You won't believe this," she whispered. "Your sister has been telling people you promised her the money and changed your mind at the last minute." I couldn't help but laugh in disbelief. "Never promised her anything," I replied. "I know," my cousin said. "That's why I called. I didn't think the story sounded right." Instead of confronting my sister again, I chose silence. Anyone willing to believe rumors without asking me probably wasn't looking for the truth anyway. A month later, our extended family gathered for a birthday celebration. I arrived expecting awkward conversations, but something felt different. Several relatives came over to congratulate my daughter on her scholarship and compliment her dedication. They spoke about her hard work rather than the old disagreement. My sister stayed mostly quiet. Toward the end of the evening, she finally approached me. "Still think you overreacted," she said. I smiled politely. "And I still think protecting my daughter's future was the right decision." The first time in months, she didn't argue. She simply nodded and walked away. As we drove home, my daughter looked out the window and said, "Mom, one day when I graduate, I want you to know that your sacrifices made it possible." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You don't owe me anything," I told her. "Just make the most of the opportunities you've earned." She smiled. In that quiet moment, I realized something important. The college fund had never just been about tuition. It represented hope, planning, and faith in my daughter's future. No luxury vacation, no matter how beautiful, could ever compare to that. And if this experience taught me anything, it's that the hardest boundaries to enforce are often with the people closest to us. But sometimes they're also the most necessary. When I finally went to bed that night, I felt lighter than I had in months. The conflict had tested my patience, strained family relationships, and forced difficult conversations. But through it all, I had kept the one promise that mattered most, to always put my daughter first.